You ever stop to think why you do what you do every day? Why you wake up early, face traffic, work endless hours, pay bills, and then repeat it all, until one day you simply die. But the most frightening part isn't the end. It's the fact that this predictable, automatic life begins much earlier than we imagine. It starts when we're children. It starts in school. What if I told you that from a young age you were trained to obey, compete, and never question? School wasn't created to produce thinkers, but rather workers, employees, cogs, well-behaved little rats running in a wheel that never stops. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it destiny." In this video, we're going to tear the blindfold from your eyes. You'll understand how we were programmed for a meaningless life, and more importantly, how to escape it before it's too late. If this topic makes you uncomfortable, good. It should, because perhaps this is the first step to finally waking up. The illusion begins at the blackboard. From the moment we first step into a classroom, something silent, almost imperceptible, starts to happen to our minds. We're not taught to think, we're taught to repeat. We're not encouraged to question, we're trained to obey. School, which should be a cradle of intellectual freedom, has become a factory of conformity. Standardized tests, rigid schedules, rules that make no sense but must be followed without question. What are we truly learning there? We're learning to follow orders, to wait for permission, to compete with the person next to us instead of collaborating. We're being trained like rats in a labyrinth where the prize is a piece of paper called a diploma. And when we finally get it, we realize we've only earned the right to run in a bigger wheel. The most perverse part is that they make us believe this is right, that this is the only way to achieve success. But success for whom? For the system. Success is you working 40 years, paying taxes, consuming what they tell you to, and never, ever stopping to ask yourself, why am I doing this? School teaches you to raise your hand to go to the bathroom, but not to raise your voice when something is wrong. It teaches formulas, but not philosophy. It teaches dates of historical tragedies, but not how to deal with your anxiety. The real trap begins there, between blackboards and rows of desks. You enter with imagination and leave with a fear of failure, prepared to obey, but without the courage to truly live. Have you ever stopped to reflect on what they taught you and what they hid from you? Work, consume, repeat. The invisible prison cycle. You leave school, go to college, get a job, and then what they call adult life begins. But what awaits you out there isn't freedom. It's a new cell, only now it's decorated with bills, targets, and even bigger targets. You wake up early, work all day, come home exhausted, and in the little free time you have left, you consume Netflix, delivery food, impulsive purchases. The cycle is simple: produce, spend, get into debt, produce more to pay, and repeat. Do you see how everything is connected? The system doesn't want you to think, it wants you to function. You're a number on a spreadsheet, a CPF with a credit limit, an employee with a badge that can be deactivated at any moment. But the cruelest part is that you learn to think this is normal. You even feel guilty for wanting to stop, for wanting to live more calmly. Nietzsche said, "Modern man thinks he is free while being a slave to his own invisible routines." And it's true. Most people live like this for decades. They wake up early, face traffic, put up with disrespectful bosses, work themselves to exhaustion, to pay bills that never stop coming. They follow a script they didn't write, but accepted, as if it were the only path. And the cruelest part is that this script is sold as normal life, as if living to survive were enough, as if postponing dreams, stifling desires, and masking frustrations with consumption were the most we deserve. When they finally retire, if they're still alive, they've already lost almost everything. Health corroded by stress, dreams buried under obligations, and the will to live died long before the body. They lived like rats, running in circles inside an invisible cage, obeying orders, accumulating weariness, selling their lives in monthly installments. And when they die as they lived, indebted, exhausted, forgotten, with a grave financed in 12 interest-free installments, as if even death had to be on layaway. This is the race, the famous rat race, a silent competition where everyone seems to know what they're doing, but no one has any idea why. Where status is worth more than purpose, and haste is confused with progress. Everyone runs, but no one arrives. Everyone competes, but no one wins. And then comes the question that needs to hammer in your consciousness like an alarm bell. Are you running by choice, or because you were conditioned? Because if you've never stopped to question this system, maybe you're already neck deep in it. Maybe you've confused routine with destiny. Maybe you're calling life what is, in reality, a social prison polished with empty promises. Wake up. There's still time to get out. But for that, you need courage. Courage to unlearn, to refuse what everyone accepts, and to live truthfully, even if it hurts. Freedom isn't at the end of the race. It's the moment you decide to stop running. The price of freedom, thinking outside the cage. Freedom. That word sounds beautiful in speeches, but terrifying in practice. Because being free demands responsibility, and most importantly, willingness. When you start to awaken, you realize how much you've been conditioned. You start to question, why do I do this? Why do I accept living a life that makes me sick, exhausts me, suffocates me? But then comes the shock. Thinking outside the cage is painful. You feel guilt, fear, and insecurity. People around you won't understand. They'll say you've changed, that you're strange. Of course you are. You've started to see the cage where everyone else is still asleep. The Danish philosopher Søren Kierkegaard said, "Anxiety is the dizziness of freedom." It's this internal discomfort that starts to push you out of the race. But leaving isn't easy because you're not running from something physical. You're breaking away from a mental structure. The system was designed so that the fear of the unknown is greater than the known suffering. That's why so many people prefer an unhappy life over the risk of reinventing themselves. They prefer to stay in the cage as long as it's comfortable, with Wi-Fi, air conditioning, meal vouchers, and a salary that pays the bills but doesn't nourish the soul. Life seems comfortable, everything seemingly works. You wake up on time, complete tasks, hit targets, receive your pay, and at the end of the month, repeat the cycle. And they even say you're lucky, that you're grateful to have a job, as if that were enough. But what no one sees or pretends not to see is that inside, you're slowly dying. Each day, a piece of your essence dissolves. You smile at your boss, but stay silent about your own desires. You obey orders, but ignore your dreams. You meet others' goals while your life passes on autopilot. You consume to numb the emptiness and call it a reward. But here's a raw, brutal truth that many people avoid hearing. Freedom has a price, and that price is high. It demands something few are willing to sacrifice: your old identity. To be free, you'll need to kill the you who was domesticated early on. The you who was trained to please, to not bother, to be functional but never conscious. The you who learned to swallow everything in silence, to consume without reflecting, to follow patterns without ever asking, does this make sense to me? Being free isn't about escaping the system, because let's be honest, none of us will escape it completely, neither you nor I. True freedom begins when you wake up, when you realize that alienation is much deeper than it seems. Pretending everything is fine is living anesthetized. It's preferable to see the pain of truth than to get lost in the comfort of illusion. Breaking free from this means stopping accepting as normal what they taught you without ever asking if it made sense. It's about deconstructing beliefs, challenging traditions, letting go of the comfort of the predictable. It's about facing the void that arises when you stop living other people's lives and finally begin to discover your own. And then comes the question that separates the courageous from the conformists. Are you willing to pay that price? Because if you're not, if you choose to cling to the false security of a fixed salary, social status, predictable routine, then accept it. You'll continue to be just another rat running in the wheel, calling prison stability, calling survival life. And the most tragic part is that deep down, you always knew you deserved more. Rewriting the rules, how to break the cycle and live with meaning. Getting out of the rat race isn't about dropping everything and running off to the woods with a backpack and a tent. It's not about becoming a hermit isolated from civilization, withdrawing from the world, or denying technology. It's not about living with fear, but with intention. It's about something much deeper and more challenging, taking full control of your existence. It's about stepping out of the role of a cog and becoming the architect of your own life. Most people live on autopilot. They wake up, rush, deliver, return home exhausted and repeat. They call it routine. They call it responsibility. But often, it's just obedience disguised as maturity. It's the fear of changing what they call adult life. Getting out of the rat race means exchanging obligation for intention. It means waking up and knowing why you're doing what you're doing. It means stopping merely completing tasks and starting to live with consciousness. But the question everyone asks is, where to begin? Start by distrusting what they taught you as normal, because almost everything that's normal is part of the prison. Working from 8 to 6 in an office that drains you dry. Buying the new phone you don't even need just to seem successful to others. Posting fake smiles while drowning in debt. Distrust. Freedom begins when you question what was never questioned, when you stop accepting rules you never chose, when you realize that repeating what everyone else does isn't living, it's obeying. Learn to live with less. Fewer things, fewer distractions, fewer expectations that aren't yours. You don't need more clothes, more technology, more applause. You need more clarity, because the more you need, the more trapped you are. The rat wheel spins driven by consumption, and each installment is another link in the invisible chain that binds you. Start simplifying your life. Less debt, fewer toxic relationships, less noise, and more truth, more silence, more conscious choices. Redefine what success means to you. Forget what others told you winning at life is. For some, success is money. For others, it's free time. For still others, it's peace. And for some, it's simply being able to walk without a weight on their chest. What is success to you? Answer that bravely, and then stop chasing goals that were never yours. Carl Jung said, "What we don't face in ourselves, we will meet as fate." In other words, everything you pretend not to feel, everything you ignore, will come back. It will demand payment. It will turn into crisis, burnout, existential void. Therefore, create sources of autonomy. Don't depend solely on a system that can discard you like a number. Study, read, develop skills, learn to think critically. School didn't teach you to think, it taught you to follow rules. But the truth is, no one can stop you from learning on your own. Every new piece of knowledge is a key to getting out of the cell they put you in, a key to breaking the invisible bars that prevent you from truly living. And perhaps most importantly of all, surround yourself with others who also want to escape. Because spending time with anesthetized people will make you fall asleep again, and those who sleep obey. Look for those who are awake, who question, who have a sparkle in their eyes, will in their hearts, courage in their souls. The escape from the rat race is lonely at first. You'll seem strange. You'll hear that you're too radical. You'll lose friends who were just comfortable in their unconsciousness. But it doesn't have to be lonely forever. When you free yourself, you inspire. And when you inspire, you find others who also want to leave or have already left. Awaken. The choice is yours. Now comes the most important part. Are you willing to be free? Or will you keep running until the end, until there's nothing left but a tired body and an empty soul? Society taught us to consume, not to reflect. Work taught us to produce, not to live, but no one taught us to be free. Today, perhaps for the first time, you are faced with something rare, a mirror, a discomfort, an invitation. And like any invitation, you can accept it or you can ignore it. But remember, the rat race only ends when you decide to stop running. If this video made sense to you, like it now, subscribe to the channel and share it with someone who hasn't woken up yet. And if this content truly awakened you, comment below, "I'm not running anymore." Let's see how many are still alive inside.